Hello viewers, welcome back to News Track. We are on episode 10 and my friend Frederick Noronha will take the lead this time.
This week we start with a bit of an unusual story where it's actually from the world of law, and there was a judgment come out which decided the fate of Goan properties which are owned by Goans but outside Goa. So the question was whether these properties would also come under the Portuguese civil code or whether it would come under Indian laws. And I think the case and the judgment was widely noticed because it has a lot of implications for everyone from the state.
That's true, Frederick. The thing had to do with the succession law, the Goan succession law, that's Portuguese law, and the whole case started actually in 1998 when the inventory for a property was in Mumbai was being done for a family of Joaquim Pereira. So he had actually given this property to one of his daughters, and there were several of them, and they started the inventory proceedings in Goa, and so the whole idea was that property that is outside Goa does not come within the Goan succession law, but the Supreme...
And the crucial aspect being that if it comes under the Goan succession law, then it would be equally shared within the children.
Yes, it would be, it would sort of fall under the whole ambit of the succession law, equal shares and whatever.
Yeah.
So the whole process took actually almost 20 years, and the order came in September of 2019. And the Supreme Court has ruled that the law applies equally to properties of Goans outside of Goa.
Which is quite a momentous decision actually, because it means that property would be seen very differently even if wherever it is based, even if it's in the rest of India or other parts of the country.
True. So it gives the inheritors equal rights to properties outside of Goa as well.
Having said that, I think we in Goa we have a tradition of being very litigation prone, and disputes within the family are quite legendary in that sense. And one of my friends who's a lawyer was talking about the possibility of even having an informal settlement or arbitration system where people could sort these things out, because a lot of families spend a lot of time fighting these cases.
That's true. And of course lawyers make a lot of money from it also, don't forget that. So this week I'd like to take up a story that actually came in on the TV channel Goa 365, and the whole thing was centered around a discussion: who is responsible for all the potholes on the roads in Goa? So there was this discussion, and there was a representative from the Congress party, one from the BJP. There was also a contractor and the activist Cecil Rodriguez. So the people on the panel were Mohandas Loliekar, Premanand Mamre of BJP, Sankalp Amonkar of the Congress, and Cecil. And when the discussion came up about who should be held responsible, is it the government? So Loliekar, who actually is a part of the Goa Forward Party, he is he holds a position there. If I'm not mistaken, he's a treasurer of the Goa Forward Party. He said that what do you expect? The situation is such, there is so much corruption that the contractor, he's a contractor himself, has to start off by paying a 5% commission. I would call it, of course, a bribe to the minister. And in more recent times, he said that you even have to pay a bribe to the local leader. It could be an MLA, it could be a party functionary, and that again amounts to 3.3 to 5% of the whole work contract. So his argument was that when the system is so corrupt, how do you expect the contractor to give you a good job? He's already paying out so much.
Government एक notification काढला 20% less उत्पन्न जाता 20% लेस उत्पाद आहे ना, हे कित्याक केला? हे केला फटिंगपण करपाक. सो तू 20% 100 रुपयाचे काम तू 80 रुपयान करता म्हणून सांगता आणि 80 रुपयाच घालता. एक्चुअली फेअर कॉम्पिटिशन उरपाक आशिल्ली. हांव 80 घालन, कोण 79 घालतलो, कोण 78 घालतलो, कोण 95 घालतलो. पूण हांगा गव्हर्मेंटान मुद्दम हें केला की 80 रुपयानूच करप. आतां सगळेच कॉन्ट्रॅक्टर 80 रुपयांक घालतात. 80 रुपयांक घालप आनी कितें करप? मिनिस्टरा म्हऱ्यां पयलीं वचप किंवा तांचे कोणा एजंटा म्हऱ्यां वचप किंवा तांचे कोणाचे जे कोण आसा तांचे म्हऱ्यां वचप, तांकां 5% फारीक करप आनी हें बूक करप. बुकींग म्हणटा सिस्टम आहा.
सो बुकिंगाक 5%.
5%.
ते कोणा दिवप?
ते कोण तरी मिनिस्टर किंवा ते कोण कन्सर्न आहा ते घेतात. ना म्हण सांगचे कोणे. मागीर पळय, मागीर पयली एक सिस्टम नाशिल्ली, आतां नवी एक सिस्टम जाला की लोकल लिडर जो आहा तो घेता. तो म्हणटा 2 ते 5% भितर.
लोकल लिडर
लोकल लिडर म्हणजे MLA कोण आहा, बाकीचे कोण आसा. MLA म्हाजे कोतान 2 ते 5% MLA मागता. एक काही MLA मागनात. अशें न्ही की सगळे हांव 100% 40 MLA म्हणना.
ओके, मागीर
आनीक ताजे नंतर जे काम जाता ते तुमी बरें काम जातलें म्हणटा कशें जाता.
Public is
Exactly.
equally responsible for this corruption.
Public
is agreeing to that there is a corruption which is going on. Corruption doesn't know effect. Why we have people? Why we have to? Why the government is claiming
Why is the contract?
Why the government is claiming the contract?
Public should not blame the contractor. We should blame the people in charge. The people in charge are responsible for running the state, sir.
Unfortunately,
ऐकय
मोहनदास लोलेकरा सारखे ट्राय वाढना या
सो यू आर हेल्पलेसली टेकिंग कमिशन.
नो नो हे असेच चालतले. असेच चालतले. गव्हर्नमेंट असेच चालतले.
These are very serious issues because it affects all of the citizens and the state and its efficiency and how damaged our vehicles get, and how safe we are on the roads and a whole lot of other things. And it's also a form of illegal tax on the citizen because at the end of the day someone has to pay for it. But I mean, while maintaining the seriousness of the issue, I couldn't help noticing that Cecile Lee Rodriguez, who is this singer and dancer, Zumba dancer, and also winner of some international level dance competitions.
That's true.
And she has put together this music video called #Rosto, okay, which basically is another version based on the original of Lona's Bebdo, and it kind of makes highlights the issue, which at some level all of us get angry about, and the highest stage of anger is humor.
That's true. And talking about humor, on the same story, there was another story about people from Kankon who were so fed up. The activists said they actually put the contractor in an ambulance. They made him lie down in an ambulance and they took him for a ride so he could feel every pothole on the road that he hadn't repaired. I thought it was pretty amusing. And of course the PWD said that this is only a short-term discomfort and the people should bear with them. And also the minister has put out a number that you can sort of WhatsApp and send a photograph of the pothole, and he said the pothole would be filled. But so far I don't think anything of that kind has happened. But to come to a little bit of a positive angle to the story, the people of Ponda were so fed up that they took up the job of filling the potholes themselves at their own cost, and this is the Goa Road Safety Forum. They've already covered a 2-kilometer stretch from Rajiv Gandhi Kala Mandir to Sapnam Park. And they have actually gone and gotten, official permission to do the work, and the government has given them permission. So it's like, the public is actually taking the work of the government in their own hands.
Shaming the government into action, kind of thing.
True.
While we are at the end of September with the tourism season about to start, a lot of tourism stories coming up. The usual stories where the rest of the country remembers Goa because it's a nice place to visit. So people writing about how they shifted to Goa, their experiences here. There's also a story on the 10 best restaurants in Goa, which is in the GQ weekly. We can go back to that later and see whether the readers agree with which are the best, which are not the best. And viewers in South Goa are going to eat their heart out because most of these restaurants are from the north. But I still believe the best food comes from the south. Anyway, most of them are from the north. So this is actually from the GQ gqindia.com site and magazine. And in the 10 best, they start off, at least 3 or 4 are from Asagaon and Anjuna area.
Yeah.
So they start off with Gunpowder and Vinayak Family Restaurant. It's a small, restaurant along the place. And then there's Susie's at Asagaon and Posada by the beach on the mad Kalangut stretch, as they describe it. And Fishman's Wharf, which is of course a South Goa restaurant at Kavilosi.
It's in Kavilosi,
Yeah, and
because there's a Fisherman's Wharf right here in
They
Panjim.
have branches, as they
Okay.
put. They have branches in Panjim and Kalangut.
Yeah.
So, but the original is at
I
Kavilosi.
see.
And Black Sheep Bistro, which is
Right.
on Swami Vivekanand Road here in Panjim itself, next to ICICI Bank. Of course, Olive Bar and Thalassa, the Greek cuisine in Sioli.
Yeah.
And Burger Factory in Morji. I've never heard of it. This is the first time hearing
Even
of
I
it.
haven't. That's-
Baba or Ram, Anjuna's best kept secret, a French bakery that runs like a well-meaning restaurant, and it offers some things like spicy Goan sausage pizza, whatever that is. So in the northern belt, there is a lot of internationalization of food going on,
That's
which
true.
is interesting in a way. Like once I was walking down this Anjuna road, and within a 500-meter stretch, I saw 4 or 5 different international cuisines there, like Israeli and German and something else. But of course, these lists are very subjective. So in that sense, no one need lose heart, because I believe that the best of food still comes from Salset,
Okay.
to my taste, and it can keep varying.
Okay. So I have to take up this extremely sad story where 4 children, young school children, drowned in a quarry, and this happened in Perne. The Mapsa police has booked the principal of the school and 3 teachers for negligence in looking after this. But the public anger was actually against the government, because the government, this report in the Herald says the government ignored the National Green Tribunal directions on illegal quarries. And so Goa has paid with 4 innocent lives, and there was also, the local blame the authorities for allowing the illegal mining. A little breakup of the figures, Frederick, if you don't mind, because there are, the Times of India said, there are 220 legal quarries and several illegal, and not a single of these legal quarries has actually been operating for the last 1 year, but none of them have been shut down, have been covered and filled up, though the rules came into effect from 2012, so that is for 7 years they've been very negligent about shutting down these quarries.
Yeah, that's a very complex story, because it's a real tragedy, when
It
someone
is a
dies so
terrible,
young.
terrible tragedy.
It could be
you
anyone's
don't-
kids, no?
Yes, absolutely.
And you just need to make one mistake, and holding someone responsible later, it's fine, but how do we prevent these issues in the first case?
Prevention is the thing, and that is where the government has to come in. You can't just let these quarries lie open and allow people to operate them illegally and never fill them up. It is.
The related issue from the world of education is that relating to this higher secondary at Aldona. I woke up on one weekday, and the first thing I saw was this video where a lot of people were screaming and shouting and raising a whole lot of issues, and I couldn't make sense of what was going on for quite some time. And to be honest, till today I'm not sure I can make sense, because the story is coming out in bits and pieces. But apparently what had happened was that a principal and a manager of St. Thomas School, higher secondary school in Aldona, got transferred, and there was some strong protest by, I don't know who, maybe some section of the parents or some villagers or whatever. Issue is that, democracy is fine, but up to what level? And I have these very ambivalent feelings about, when someone else decides how someone else should be running their job. So there was a lot of protest there in the school, and if you watch social media, you would wonder what's going on. One of the prominent Aldonkars, who happens to be in Singapore at the moment, she sent me a mail and said, what's going on in Aldona? And I said, I don't have an answer really. Along the way, people seemed to have second thoughts and blamed social media for stoking up the issue in such a big way. And then it took all kinds of, diversions, and it went into.
I did read quite a few reports, but frankly, I couldn't get to the nub of the story, so I just didn't go beyond that. But another, case that came up in the High Court, where the Goa Foundation was the main petitioner, was the rehabilitation of the sanctuary, and all these mining had happened within the sanctuary. But this is in relation to the Netravali Wildlife Sanctuary, and 34 leases existed within the sanctuary, and 13 of them were operational, and the sanctuary was left as it is, though there was a High Court order of 2012. So from 2012 to 2019, not much restoration of the. But what is the interesting fact here is that the government, at least the government lawyer, said to the court that there is no way that the government can recover this money from the mine owners or those who were operating the mines. So he said that he could not make any commitment in the matter, as the legality of such recoveries had to be studied. So the Forest Department has been told by the High Court that they should file yearly reports on how the restoration of the sanctuary is happening.
Devika, I get the feeling that when the story comes out from the courts or from the assembly, you get the most interesting figures and facts.
Yes, that's
Otherwise,
true.
it's very difficult to know what's going on, and you don't have a clue. You're left with this feeling that I know something is happening there, but I can't put my finger on what's happening.
Exactly.
And as journalists, we have faced this very often in the past now, in
Yeah,
that sense.
that's true. But in a related story, which I thought was quite interesting also, was Michael Lobo, who is the Minister for Ports. He is talking of rehabilitating the barges, and some of the figures that came out were quite interesting. They wanted the government to waive they said they're in distress, and they had loans which amounted to 363 crores, but today the outstanding is 51.25 crore. That is the figure given by the Atul Jadhav, who is the acting president of the Goa Barge Owners Association. And then, of course, they had an assurance from the Minister of Ports, Michael Lobo, that he would somehow try to find a new cargo for them to operate, so the barges wouldn't run at huge losses that they are currently. And I thought his suggestion was quite interesting. So he said that there is transportation of goods and containers and trucks, that the highways are being overused. So why can't we transport some of this, the cargo by barge, by river? And so he is talking of, bringing up this with the Union Minister of Shipping. So let's see how that goes.
You have the Ro-Ro trains, no? Where the trains actually carry trucks on them. I've actually seen them when waiting on the railway station for incoming family members or whatever. We are in news track episode 10. In case you just joined us, we are almost halfway through the program, and a small run-up of some important or interesting events that happened during the week. The government has announced that Goa will be declared an organic state shortly. There, of course, the beach shacks issue is in the news, and there's a lot of debate over whether they will take off, whether the government will have to make some adjustment to make that happen, or whether the visitors will miss the beach shacks in the coming.
Yeah, so the matter has now gone back to the court, and they moved the High Court because the whole problem started with the Goa Coastal Zone Management Plan not being ready, and so they got hauled up by the NGT court. That's the National Green Tribunal. And the National Green Tribunal has pointed out that Goa is the only state that has failed to finalize the Coastal Zone Management Plan. And so the NGT has given Goa an extension up to November 15. But that means that till the plan is finalized, the shacks cannot come up on the beach. So they are extremely worried about the delay and loss, and so they've moved the High Court. to stay the NGT order. But I must point out that people who have shacks in private properties are allowed to carry on.
Talking about which, I was just looking at Google News, news.google.com, and if you do a keyword search for Goa, you find the stories that the rest of the country finds interesting about Goa.
Yeah.
And tourism, of course, is a huge thing because it means many people's holidays. So there was a lot of concern that the shacks may not be there and things like that. And there are a whole lot of other stories, also tourism related, coming up just at this time because the season is about to start. One of the stories which I noticed was that Goa, this is in Economic Times, it says Goa could be losing its shine. In terms of tourism arrivals, Goa is no longer among the top gainers in terms of tourism growth, So they have said instead that it is places like Ooty, Rishikesh, Varanasi, Chandigarh, Trichy, even Palole they mentioned. Although they have not mentioned Goa, they mentioned Palole, So, I mean, in terms of growth is a tricky figure, no? If you start from a small base, it can show a huge growth. But at the same time, there was this other article, very interesting article, which is by Dulcie D'Cruz in the Herald, and she seems to have taken the lead from places like Prague and Venice, where they have an excess of tourists. And the title of the article is itself interesting. It says, "When selfie-taking tourists fall into your living room, something needs to be done." And while in the tourist belt, people in the business are always grumbling and saying we don't have enough tourists, excepting for a few years and seasons. There are many parts of the state which feel that we have too many tourists and we don't know how to deal with them.
I would completely agree with that point of view.
So she's gone to Fontanes. Dulcie has gone to Fontanes and she's spoken to people in Kalangut, Kandoli. Some people say, okay, we can tolerate them. Like in Fontanes, one view was that we get a better kind of tourist coming here, but others saying it's becoming a bit too much. And then, tourism also, it has this overkill effect kind of thing where when you get a big rush, you can't control the flood.
It is a fact. That's a fact. Mass tourism is being opposed in some of the biggest tourist places in the world. Amsterdam, for one. They say they're getting tired of so many tourists coming into Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Well, there was one story that really sort of made a splash on social media, and that had to do with the small notification put out by the ASI, that's the Archaeological Survey of India, which gave the people of Goa 15 days to bring forward all their antiques in their homes, so that the ASI could examine them and decide if they could be given antique status or antique certification. Now there was a huge row about it, and of course Wendell put out a big protest letter.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Wendell Rodrigues, the designer, and he said that, considering that we have so many antiques and antiquities in our homes, does the ASI, expect us to bring these things forward? But the government...
he also made a point that if you consider that we have homes which are 200 years old, you don't expect us in 15 days to list everything and...
Exactly. But the government says it doesn't have any interest in taking over your antiquities or antiques. They only want to document it as an antique, so that they won't ask you to surrender it. It's just to bring the preservation and conservation of art objects, so that it can be better appreciated. India's cultural heritage can be better appreciated.
From the world of the diaspora, two quick stories. One is that Valerie Vaz, the sister of Keith Vaz. Keith is, of course, the much bigger name of the two, but Valerie also has been a member of parliament from the Labour Party for a long, long time. And she has just been appointed as an advisor to the Queen. So she's on the Privy Council now, and the Privy Council is, a formal body of advisors to the Sovereign of the United Kingdom. It has about a few hundred members, and senior politicians, members of the House of Commons, House of Lords. So she's on that council now. The other story that came out, and which I noticed via the Goan Voice UK, is the death of Andre Roberto Gonçalves Pereira, who was a minister in Portugal, and he died recently.
Okay.
He's, I think, from the Gonçalves family of Divar, probably. So he has been around for quite a long time and holding prominent post. We tried to do a Google Translate to get an idea of what he was. He was a Minister of Foreign Affairs in one of the governments of the 1980s and things like that.
Okay.
So
There was this small news item that really caught my eye. It was not a local news item, but I think that for public information, it's quite interesting. The Central Adoption Resource Authority has said that the law makes it clear that an adopted child has the same rights as a biological offspring. So the CARA, that is the center, they have come in response to a circular where a child was being denied facilities. A lady had applied for a health smart card for her third offspring, who happened to be an adopted child, and she was denied it. The government said that you can't because he's an adopted child, and of course the government then rules that it adopts. The rules are apply equally to an adopted child as a biological offspring.
one of the smaller issues that came up here is that the government is talking about starting a private medical college in Goa.
Yeah.
So
I know Vishwajit Rane went to Delhi to meet various ministers, etc., and he came up with a bag full of announcements recently.
two things. One is, of course, the promises need to be delivered on, and if ideally they should be delivered on in a non-controversial manner, because while we can do with more medicos, at least for reasons of export and all that, many of the Goan doctors are actually in the UK and in a whole lot of other places.
Yeah.
But there's always that slip between the cup and the lip of implementing.
That's true. Well, there was a news item from Margaon, and so some citizens decided to do a mock opening of Margaon's forgotten parking project, and I thought that was quite amusing and interesting. And it was the shadow council for Margaon. They used children from the kindergarten to do the inauguration. You know how it is, government officials love to inaugurate and lay foundation stones, and so they said that the foundation stone for the project was laid years ago, but it never came through, so they went and inaugurated it all over again.
Another small item, the Goa writes, this is from the Times of India, Goa writes to the centre for a cut in the visa on arrival fees. And what I found interesting there was that they say out of nearly 8 to 8.5 lakh foreign tourists who arrive annually, almost 2.5 lakh are charter tourists. Of late, the state has seen a decline in the number of charter arrivals. However, the inflow of free independent travellers,
FITs,
to Goa is growing, and the FIT numbers has increased charter numbers during the last 2 seasons.
Okay.
So they are saying that they want a cut in the visa on arrival fees.
Okay.
That is one thing. The other thing is that visa rules can be quite tight for some people. Like, so I had this friend of mine who happened to be born in Karachi, okay, and they had migrated to Karachi much before Pakistan was even formed, when it was just another British Indian city. Anyone born in Karachi has a very difficult time to get a visa to Goa.
Yeah, that's true. But I thought that they'd made different kind of thing. Christians were included in
I think that's for nationality. If they want nationality. Supposing your place of birth shows you as Karachi and you're holding, say, Canadian or American or whatever visa, passport, then it will be very difficult to come in. So all these issues are there. I don't know what the fees are like, but getting visas can be difficult sometimes. Increasingly, earlier it was quite easy to get an Indian visa.
Okay.
But today it's.
Is it that I've heard this from a lot of foreigners traveling to Goa, that the Indian missions are quite inefficient, and there are always long queues. I don't know, that's what the feedback I've got often. So I'm not quite sure that it has to do with visa fees or whatever, but I think it's the inefficiency of how these missions are run.
And then increasing security concerns, and also the fact that some of these services have been privatized, so I don't know how easy or how difficult it is.
So I was just looking at a little news item that came. It said that with the new act, the disabled persons number in Goa has gone up to 60,000. Earlier it was 33,000, because a lot of 21 disability conditions are now recognized by the government, and the old act of 1995 had provisions mandating government buildings to be made accessible, but they haven't been complied with. That's what the Goa disability rights people have been complaining about.
Lot of issues and lot of concerns, so our time is up, so we need to move on, and we'll be back in exactly a week from now. Thank you so much for being with us, and your feedback is always welcome. Thank you.
Thank you and bye.